Imagine waking up in a world where every feeling you've ever kept inside bursts into existence as a living flower. A place where love glows like sunlight, anger burns red, and sorrow drips blue tears onto the ground. This isn't just another dimension, it's a realm of pure emotion. But beware, not all who enter can leave. When one man stumbles through the veil between worlds, he meets a mysterious guardian whose gifts may be both salvation and chains. Will their bond save him, or trap them both forever? Stay until the end to uncover the truth behind this haunting tale of connection, sacrifice, and the power of human emotion. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that will bloom in your mind long after they're told. The day started like any other, a mundane commute, the faint hum of traffic, and the usual blur of faces on the subway. Jack Harper was no one special, just another cog in the machine of life, trudging through his routine without much thought. Yet something felt off. It wasn't anything tangible, just a prickling sensation at the back of his neck, as if unseen eyes were watching him from the shadows. He shook it off, blaming fatigue or perhaps the remnants of last night's restless sleep. But then came the storm. Not the kind that brews in clouds, but the kind that erupts within, a sudden surge of overwhelming sadness, so intense it nearly brought him to his knees. He stumbled off the train at the next stop, clutching his chest as though it might ease the weight pressing down on him. The streets were empty, eerily silent despite being midday. And then, out of nowhere, a flash of light blinded him, and when he opened his eyes, everything had changed. Gone were the concrete sidewalks and towering buildings. Instead, he stood in a field of vibrant, pulsating flowers unlike anything he'd ever seen. Each bloom seemed alive, shifting colors and shapes as though responding to some invisible force. As Jack reached out tentatively to touch one, it bloomed brighter under his fingertips, releasing a wave of warmth that coursed through his body. Confusion gave way to awe, and then panic. Where was he? How had he gotten here? And most importantly, how could he get back? Jack wandered aimlessly, his footsteps crunching against the soft earth beneath him. The air smelled sweet, almost intoxicating, like a mix of honey and freshly cut grass. Every step he took caused the flowers around him to react, their petals unfurling or closing depending on his mood. Fear made them shrink away, curiosity drew them closer, and frustration turned them fiery red. It didn't take long for him to realize the obvious. These weren't ordinary plants. They were tied to his emotions, somehow feeding off them, or maybe even amplifying them. As he walked, the landscape shifted subtly, morphing from open fields into dense forests of towering trees whose leaves shimmered like stained glass. Their bark bore intricate carvings resembling faces frozen in expressions of joy, sorrow, anger, and fear. It was as though the entire world was built from the raw essence of humanity's innermost feelings. Jack couldn't help but feel small, insignificant in the face of such grandeur. His thoughts were interrupted by a sound, a melody so hauntingly beautiful it stopped him in his tracks. Following the source, he emerged into a clearing bathed in golden light. There, standing amidst a swirl of glowing blossoms, was a woman unlike anyone he'd ever encountered. Her hair cascaded down her back like liquid silver, catching the light with every movement. Her dress flowed around her like water, adorned with patterns that mirrored the flowers surrounding her. She turned to face him, her eyes piercing yet gentle, as though she already knew everything about him. "You shouldn't be here," she said simply, her voice melodic yet firm. The woman introduced herself as Lyra, the keeper of emotions. Her role, she explained, was to maintain balance in this world, a task far more complex than Jack initially understood. Emotions weren't merely abstract concepts here. They were tangible forces capable of shaping reality itself. Too much unchecked anger could cause wildfires. Unchecked joy might lead to reckless abandon, and sorrow left untended could drown entire regions in perpetual rain. Lyra explained that Jack's arrival was no accident. Something in his emotional state had resonated with the barrier between their worlds, pulling him across. Whether intentional or not, His presence now disrupted the delicate equilibrium she worked tirelessly to preserve. Despite her initial coldness, there was a flicker of sympathy in her gaze, a hint of understanding that intrigued Jack. "I can help you return," she finally offered, "but it won't be easy. You'll need to navigate the gardens of memory, confront your deepest truths, and earn the right to pass through the veil again." Though skeptical, Jack agreed. He had no choice. What else could he do in a world so alien, so overwhelming? Lyra handed him his first gift, a single white flower that pulsed softly in his palm. "This will guide you," she said. "But remember, every gift I give strengthens our connection. Be careful what you wish for." Their journey began in earnest, weaving through landscapes that defied logic and imagination. They crossed meadows where laughter echoed like wind chimes, valleys shrouded in mist that tasted of regret, and rivers whose waters shimmered with memories long forgotten. With each step, Jack grew more attuned to the rhythm of this strange world, learning to read its signs and respond to its demands. Yet the deeper they ventured, the more he noticed something peculiar about Lyra. For all her wisdom and composure, there were moments when cracks appeared in her facade, brief flashes of vulnerability that hinted at a past she refused to discuss. Once, during a particularly treacherous climb, she slipped and nearly fell. Jack caught her just in time, and for a split second, he saw fear in her eyes. Real, unguarded fear. "Why are you doing this?" he asked later that evening as they rested beneath a canopy of starlight blossoms. "Helping me, I mean, isn't letting me stay easier." Lyra hesitated before answering. "Because I know what it's like to lose yourself in this place. To forget who you are. If I can prevent that fate for someone else, I will." Her words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Jack realized then that Lyra wasn't just his guide. She was a prisoner of sorts, bound to this world by duty and perhaps something deeper. But what? The Gardens of Memory proved to be the most challenging part of their journey. Here, emotions didn't just manifest as flowers, they took physical form, appearing as ghostly apparitions of people from Jack's past. Friends, family, lovers. All those he'd wronged or been wronged by materialized before him, forcing him to relive painful moments he'd buried deep within himself. One memory stood out above the rest: the death of his younger sister, Emily. He'd blamed himself for years, convinced that if he'd paid more attention, stayed closer, she wouldn't have wandered into the road that fateful day. Now, facing her spectral figure, he broke down completely. Tears streamed down his face as he apologized over and over again. It was Lyra who pulled him back from the brink. Kneeling beside him, she placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered, "You can't change the past, but you can choose how you carry it forward." In that moment, a new flower sprouted at her feet, deep blue with streaks of silver. She picked it and held it out to him. "Take it. Let it remind you that healing is possible." Their bond deepened further with this exchange, though neither acknowledged it outright. Still, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that Lyra's presence was becoming less distant, more personal. Was it because of the flowers? Or was there something else at play? As they pressed onward, the emotional toll of the gardens began to show on both Jack and Lyra. Though she tried to maintain her composed exterior, Jack noticed subtle changes in her demeanor. Her steps were slower, her gaze more distant, and there were moments when she seemed to hesitate before speaking, as if weighing every word carefully. One evening, as they rested beside a lake whose surface mirrored the star-filled sky above, Jack decided to confront her. "You've been guiding me through this place, helping me face my own demons," he began, his voice soft but firm. "But what about you? What are you running from?" Lyra stiffened, her fingers tracing the edge of a nearby flower absent-mindedly. For a moment, he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, with a sigh that carried the weight of centuries, she spoke. "This world, it wasn't always like this. Once, it was vibrant and free, not bound by rules or guardianship. I was born here among the first of my kind, the Keepers. We existed to nurture emotions, not control them." Her eyes darkened as she continued. But then something changed. The balance shifted, and emotions began to consume everything. Entire regions fell into chaos because people couldn't, or wouldn't, manage their feelings. My predecessors sacrificed themselves to restore order, creating the veil that separates our worlds. Now I am the last keeper. And if I falter, she trailed off, her voice barely a whisper. If I fail, this world will collapse entirely. Jack felt a pang of guilt twist in his chest. He hadn't considered the burden she carried, the loneliness of being the sole protector of such a fragile existence. Without thinking, he reached out and placed a hand over hers. "You're not alone anymore," he said quietly. The next day brought new challenges. They entered a region known as the Forest of Echoes, where every sound, every footstep, every breath was amplified and distorted, creating an eerie symphony of noise. It was disorienting, maddening even, and Jack found himself struggling to focus. Panic bubbled up inside him, threatening to overwhelm his senses. Lyra, however, remained calm. She pulled a small vial from her satchel and handed it to him. Inside was a shimmering liquid that glowed faintly green. "Drink this," she instructed. "It'll help steady your mind." He hesitated but obeyed. As the liquid slid down his throat, a wave of clarity washed over him, silencing the cacophony around them. Grateful, he turned to thank her, only to find her staring at him intently. "What is it?" he asked, unnerved by her scrutiny. "You're stronger than you think," she replied softly. "Stronger than most who come here. Most humans crumble under the weight of their own emotions. But you keep finding ways to rise above them." Her words stirred something within him, a flicker of pride mixed with doubt. Was she right? Or was she simply trying to encourage him? Either way, the bond between them grew stronger with each passing moment. Their journey took them deeper into uncharted territory, where the landscape became increasingly surreal. They encountered fields of flowers that hummed with music, trees whose roots intertwined to form intricate labyrinths, and skies painted in colors Jack couldn't name. Each step revealed another layer of this strange, beautiful world, and another piece of Lyra's enigmatic personality. One afternoon, while crossing a bridge made of crystalline vines, Jack asked her about the flowers she gave him. "Why do they feel so alive? Like they're part of me now?" Lyra smiled faintly. "Because they are. Every flower I give you contains a fragment of my essence, a piece of my soul, if you will. That's why our connection grows stronger with each gift. It's also why I must be cautious. Giving too much could bind us permanently." The revelation stunned him. "Is that why you've been holding back?" She nodded, her expression tinged with sadness. "I've spent centuries guarding this world, keeping myself apart from others. Letting someone in, it's dangerous. Not just for me, but for you too." Her honesty caught him off guard, stirring a mix of admiration and protectiveness. "Then let me help you," he said impulsively. "Whatever burden you're carrying, share it with me." For the first time, Lyra looked truly vulnerable. "You don't understand what you're asking," she murmured. "Maybe not," he admitted, "but I'm willing to try." The closer they got to the veil, the more unstable the world seemed to become. Flowers wilted and rebloomed in rapid succession, skies shifted unpredictably, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. It was as though the very fabric of reality was unraveling. Lyra explained that this instability was tied to Jack's presence. His arrival had disrupted the delicate equilibrium she worked so hard to maintain. "The longer you stay, the worse it will get," she warned. "We need to reach the veil soon, or risk destroying everything." Despite the urgency, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that leaving would mean abandoning Lyra. He'd grown attached to her, not just as a guide, but as a person. Her strength, her vulnerability, her quiet determination, they all resonated with him in ways he couldn't fully explain. One night, as they camped beneath a canopy of bioluminescent blossoms, Jack voiced his concerns. "What happens to you after I leave? Will you be okay?" Lyra hesitated, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "I'll continue doing what I've always done, protecting this world, no matter the cost." But she paused, her voice trembling slightly. "I'll miss you." The admission hung in the air between them, heavy and raw. Jack wanted to tell her he'd miss her too, that he cared about her more than he should, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. Finally, they reached the edge of the veil, a shimmering curtain of light that pulsed with energy. Beyond it lay Jack's world, familiar yet distant. Stepping through would mean returning to his old life, leaving behind the wonders and dangers of this realm. But there was a catch. Crossing the veil required severing the connection forged by Lyra's gifts. Each flower she'd given him represented a thread binding them together, and breaking those threads would erase any memory of her from his mind. "You have to decide," Lyra said, her voice steady despite the tears glistening in her eyes. "Stay here with me, or go home and forget this ever happened." Jack stared at her, torn between two impossible choices. Staying meant giving up everything he knew, embracing a life of uncertainty alongside someone he barely understood. Leaving meant returning to safety, but losing the one person who truly saw him for who he was. In the end, his decision came down to one simple truth. He couldn't bear the thought of forgetting her. "I'm staying," he declared, his voice resolute. Lyra's eyes widened in shock. "Are you sure? This isn't just a new beginning. It's a sacrifice. You'll never see your world again." "I know," he said, stepping closer to her. "But maybe this is where I belong." With Jack's decision made, the veil began to stabilize, its chaotic fluctuations calming as though acknowledging his choice. Lyra led him to a secluded grove where ancient trees formed a natural cathedral, their branches arching overhead like ribs of a great beast. At the center stood a pedestal carved from living wood, upon which rested a single blooming flower unlike any Jack had seen before. Its petals shimmered with every color imaginable, radiating warmth and light. "This is the heart of emotions," Lyra explained. "It sustains this world and binds those who choose to remain here. To complete your transformation, you must accept it." Jack approached the pedestal cautiously, his heart pounding. Reaching out, he touched the flower, and a surge of energy coursed through him, rewriting his very essence. Memories of his old life faded, replaced by new ones that intertwined seamlessly with Lyra's. When the process was complete, he turned to her, feeling lighter somehow, as if a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying had finally lifted. "What now?" he asked. Lyra smiled, her eyes shining with hope. "Now we rebuild. Together." Life in the parallel world proved both challenging and rewarding. Jack adapted quickly, learning to harness the power of emotions in ways he never imagined possible. With Lyra by his side, he discovered hidden strengths within himself, unlocking abilities he didn't know he possessed. Yet their newfound partnership wasn't without its trials. The world still bore scars from years of imbalance, and maintaining harmony required constant vigilance. Conflicts arose when certain regions resisted change, clinging to outdated patterns of behavior. Through it all, Jack and Lyra worked tirelessly, their bond growing stronger with each obstacle they overcame. One particularly grueling day, after resolving a dispute between warring factions of sentient flowers, Jack collapsed onto the grass, exhausted but satisfied. Lyra joined him, lying back to gaze at the kaleidoscopic sky above. "We make a good team," she said, her tone teasing but sincere. Jack chuckled, rolling onto his side to face her. "Yeah, we do. Who would have thought a guy from Earth could fit in here?" Lyra's smile softened, her eyes reflecting the stars. "Maybe it's not about fitting in. Maybe it's about belonging." Months passed, and Jack began to notice subtle changes in Lyra. Her once guarded demeanor gave way to moments of genuine laughter, her movements less rigid and more fluid. She laughed freely, danced under moonlit skies, and even allowed herself to cry when grief struck unexpectedly. Watching her transform filled Jack with a profound sense of fulfillment. He realized that staying hadn't just been about finding a new home, it had been about helping Lyra rediscover her humanity. In turn, she had helped him confront his own fears and insecurities, teaching him that vulnerability wasn't weakness, but strength. One evening, as they sat beside a tranquil pond reflecting twin moons, Jack voiced a thought that had been lingering in his mind. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd chosen to leave?" Lyra glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. "Sometimes. But I think we're exactly where we're meant to be." Her words resonated deeply, echoing the truth he'd come to accept. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Their journey wasn't without its darker moments. Shadows from the past occasionally surfaced, testing their resolve. One such instance occurred during a visit to the Hall of Reflections, a sacred site where memories of fallen keepers were preserved. Seeing the faces of those who had sacrificed themselves for the world weighed heavily on Lyra, reigniting doubts about her ability to lead. Jack, sensing her turmoil, reminded her of how far they'd come. "You're not alone anymore," he said firmly. "We're in this together." His reassurance bolstered her confidence, allowing her to confront her fears head-on. Together, they devised strategies to address lingering issues, implementing reforms that strengthened the world's foundations. Slowly but surely, the scars began to heal. Through these trials, their relationship deepened further. What had started as mutual respect evolved into something far more profound, an unbreakable partnership rooted in trust, understanding, and love. Years later, standing atop a hill overlooking a thriving landscape bathed in golden light, Jack reflected on how far they'd come. The world was no longer a fragile construct teetering on the brink of collapse. It was a living, breathing entity pulsating with vitality and emotion. Beside him, Lyra leaned into his embrace, her presence a constant source of comfort and inspiration. "We did it," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "No," Jack corrected gently. "You did it. I just tagged along for the ride." She laughed, swatting his arm playfully. "Don't sell yourself short. None of this would have been possible without you." As they stood there, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Jack knew he'd made the right choice. This world, chaotic, unpredictable, breathtakingly beautiful, was his home now. And Lyra, she was his heart. And thus, two souls found solace in a realm born of emotion and connection. If this story of courage, love, and self-discovery resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe for more tales that explore the boundless depths of imagination. Until next time, may your own journey lead you to places you never dreamed possible.